I've got a 50-yard pitch shot here and I'm really struggling to judge the distance well. I'm going to show you a couple of really simple ways that you can judge the distance a heck of a lot easier than you do at the moment. Before we begin, don't forget, hit that link below to my website to get on the waiting list for lessons with myself here at Wiltbury Park Golf Club. Now we're faced with a 50-yard pitch shot here, but it's a bit of a struggle. Why is it a bit of a struggle? Because the problem is I don't know how far back and through I've got to take the golf club. But the problem is, before we even know how far back and through the club's got to go, we need to make sure that the setup is where it should be for a shot like this. Now, there's three basic ways the setup has a huge influence about how far that ball is going to go for this certain distance here. Now, a lot of you want to pop that ball straight up in the air. So what you will do is what I call setup number one. You will end up with your feet pointing left and you will open up that club face. I've got a 58-degree wedge here. And the problem is, if I open that up, I'm adding a ton of loft to an already really lofted golf club. So if you tend to set up like this, what I call setup number one, opening the face, pointing ourselves left of target, negating the face because it's pointing now at the target because I'm aiming more left, you will more than likely end up unbelievably short. Even if you put a big full swing into it, you're going to pop that ball straight up in the air and really struggle to get the distance that you deserve for this sort of shot. So setup number one, please don't do it. If this is what you set up like, it is man down. You are going to struggle to get that ball to where you should be. Setup number two is a little bit different. Setup number two is a little bit more neutral. Setup number two is a little bit more neutral. So you're aiming slightly left of target. You've got that face slightly open, but you still want a little bit more loft on top of it. So what you end up doing for a setup number two, you know you shouldn't set up to it like a bunker shot with the face wide open, but you feel like you haven't got enough loft on that golf club. And the problem there is you're going to want to try and hang back and try and scoop that ball up in the air. So you're going to catch a ton of ground before the ball. Again, more than likely the ball's going to go short, or you might very likely miss the ground completely, hit the middle of that golf ball, and it's going to go shooting through that green. So again, this is what I call the in-between setup. So you just open the face slightly with the feet pointing slightly to the left. You're unsure about how far that ball's going to go, and that's a really sticky situation. So setup number two, you will more than likely try and scoop that ball up in the air. Setup number three is almost completely the opposite, and it's actually what I call the best setup for most of you golfers out there. Don't get me wrong, some of you already do this, some might already be really good at judging that distance, but this is for you if you really, really struggle. Setup number three is this. You will put the ball further back in the stance, you will set up relatively square to the target, and you'll actually just slightly de-loft the golf club, because you'll recognize something here. There's already enough loft on our wedges to get that ball up in the air. Our goal is to make better contact with the ball on a shot like this. How do we make better contact? We have to compress the golf ball. We're not going to be able to scoop the ball up and get compression. We have to compress that ball. And the best way of doing that is by setting up a little bit more neutrally. If with anything, that face, that loft, slightly down. So there's far less loft on that golf club compared to more loft, because we've already got a ton of loft on that golf club, which is again why 70-degree wedges, 80-degree wedges have not been very popular when they have come out into the public domain. It is going to be a real struggle to get that ball to where we want it to go. So any of you who are really, really struggling from this sort of 50-yard distance and in, I would recommend setup number three. Aiming your feet a little bit more towards that target, not too open. If anything, maybe a yard or two left if you wish, but making sure, if anything, we're actually taking a little bit of loft off the golf club rather than adding loft to it. And that is the key here, because we won't need any real effort to get that ball to that target, and it'll still go up in the air. And because of the quality of the contact, there's more spin. And when there's more spin, there's more stop. it just totally adds up. So get away from setup number 1, get away from setup number 2, and go to setup number 3 where you're putting less loft on it. And for what we feel is very little effort, you're going to meet that target, whatever it might be.